Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by Good Marketing and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So seemingly out of nowhere, data centers have been proposing new facilities in many Michigan communities. Most are being met with pretty strong opposition, but it's really hard to keep up with what the concerns are, what the rebuttals have been, and ultimately what the truth is. Here to discuss the topic on a broader scale, as well as some details on the proposed Lansing-based project, is the Vice President of Strategy and Operations for Deep Green, Mr. Luke Gavin. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you. Well, let's start from the top for those who are a little naive about what we're talking about here. What is a data center and what does it do?
The data center, in its very simplest form, is a building that hosts computers, and that's kind of it. So if you think of it as a sort of self-storage unit, people can host their computers at a data center, and as a data center operator, we provide space, we provide cooling, and we provide power to those clients.
Got it. And why is there such a need to have so many new data centers in new locations at this particular point in time?
So, data centers have been around for decades. They've grown steadily over, the past 2 or 3 decades. Obviously, with AI boom over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, the volume of data centers has increased pretty significantly. Really, the reason why they're sort of entering new regions is the need for power. So the traditional data center hubs, where they were being built really without anyone really noticing, have run out of spare power. So data center developers are going to new locations where there's more available power, new geographies, new countries, new states, to try and continue the build out of the data centers to match the demand from the AI boom, which is growing and growing.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. So people basically benefit from data centers by having more capacity for computations and AI and all the things that go into it. Like, what if these data centers aren't built?
Yeah, so everything in modern life, requires a data center in some way. From the moment you wake up and you use your phone to sort of this call, to a hospital doing kind of medical research, to a factory doing sort of advanced engineering. Data centers are used almost in every facet of our modern lives, and without them, the lives that we all enjoy would just simply not be possible at all. So we sort of all benefit from technological advances, which are enabled. They're the kind of infrastructure that sits right at the bottom of those technological advances.
And so does the geography of a data center matter much, like having one in Lansing or Dallas, Texas, or New York, probably not in New York City, but, does that matter? Does it serve kind of a certain local community?
It really depends on the use case. So traditionally, data centers were focused around sort of key hubs. So, for example, in Virginia or in the west of London, that would be a data center hub. And that's because it's really crucial that for some use cases that the time that it takes to send data to and from that data center is very short. So whether that's a financial trading algorithm, that time that it takes to send data to and from a data center needs to be very, very short. For other use cases, so sort of these AI training models, that time is a lot less relevant. And that's one of the reasons why data centers have sort of started spreading out, because they don't need to be near kind of trading hubs, financial hubs, population hubs. They can be kind of anywhere, because that latency or the sort of time it takes is less important now.
Got it. And so is it fair to say that if the population resists new data centers and are successful, that we would just run into capacity constraints and times and speed and all the things that we enjoy online, cloud computing and AI and all those kinds of things would slow down, and we would end up getting less speed and functionality?
Potentially. I think it's really important that the public have their voice and are able to voice concerns about new data center developments. And ultimately what we hope happens is people's concerns are turned into sort of laws or regulations that make people do data centers the right way. We believe when they're done correctly, they pose very little harm and deliver the benefits, like you said, of sort of technological advances, modern day services, all of that stuff. But when they're not done correctly, they can cause harm. And I think that feeds into the public's perception that data centers are a negative thing and sort of loses focus on the positive side of them.
Makes sense. Okay. Before I dive into my next topic, I want to give a nod to our friends at Wagoner Financial. Whether you're just starting out, planning for retirement, or anywhere in between, Wagoner is there to help you make smart financial decisions. They offer comprehensive, customized planning from investment strategies to tax solutions to insurance, accounting, and estate planning. Wagoner is dedicated to supporting you, your family, business, and future. Using their unique team approach and maximizing each member's specializations, they're sure that there is someone there to help you answer the questions that you have. Schedule a consultation by visiting wagoner-financial.com or give them a call at 517-853-3367. So as the person who's in there lobbying for data centers being built correctly, what are the oppositions in a nutshell? What are the 3 to 5 things that the citizens are concerned about happening in their communities?
Yeah, I think that the main ones are power. So data centers use an enormous amount of power, and that's only set to increase. In the US, utility rates have gone up significantly recently. There is a lot of, ultimately it's a market, and the more you increase demand, most times the price increases. So there is valid concern that by adding a lot of power demand onto local grids, that utility rates for residents goes up.
Okay.
And I think there's concerns of data centers paying their fair share of those increases. And there's a worry that they're getting special rates, and local residents and small businesses in the local area are left to pick up the bill through their utility bills. I think water use is rightly a massive concern. So that's both kind of the water use of the data centers themselves and where that water is coming from. Is it sort of draining ground reservoirs? Is it being taken from rivers? And there's also the water discharge from data centers and making sure that they're not sort of putting pollutants into the local environment. And I think the land use is also a concern for people. Some of these new data centers are enormous. They're being built on rural land, and I think local residents are concerned that there's just sort of this huge faceless warehouses are just propping up on what once was maybe farmland. And is that the best use of that land? And do people want to live near a kind of huge industrial complex?
Makes sense. Yep. And how about, have I heard noise is a concern, that people are concerned that there's going to be a hum or a sound that comes from the buildings?
Yeah. I think noise is a concern depending on the location, but if it is in a sort of urban or semi-urban environment, then noise is definitely sort of concerned.
Right on. Okay. And you're with Deep Green, which is you're proposing a new data center in Lansing. What's your value proposition as a company? And how do you compare with other competitors, and how do you differ?
So Deep Green was sort of started, we looked at the AI boom, and I think the same concerns that residents and businesses in local areas are having, we had the same concerns. So Deep Green was really founded to tackle that head on by building data centers to meet the demands of sort of hugely increased computing that we're seeing, but doing it in the right way. The main sort of function that the main way that we do that is through giving the heat from the data centers to the local communities. So data centers produce a huge amount of heat. I mean, you'll notice that if you have a laptop on your lap, you'll feel the heat, and it's exactly the same. But you sort of times that, by millions. These data centers are kicking off a huge amount of heat, which we believe is just simply wasted in the vast majority of data centers. So Deep Green, we capture that heat, we utilize that heat, and we give it away for free to the local environment. In the smallest case, we're heating swimming pools in the UK. But really what we're focusing on now is heating whole cities by integrating district energy systems. So that's the kind of core purpose of Deep Green. On top of that, all of our designs use a sort of closed loop system. So it means we don't draw any water from the local environment. We don't put any water back from the data center into the local environment. We build a lot smaller. So we sort of generally are within an urban environment, using sort of brownfield sites, unused sites, and we fit in with the local environment, and we use spare capacity on the power grid. We make sure that we pay for all of our power infrastructure and pay full price for any energy we use to make sure that we don't have any impact on the local utility rates.
There's a lot to unpack there because there's a lot of good data in there. So you in your landing page on your website, it says spend less on power, emit less carbon, free heat when needed, and decarbonize your world. Sounds like, I mean, those are all pretty powerful statements, and certainly to be at odds with what people maybe think data centers are. So it sounds like you really intentionally partner with, it says even heat network partners trying to create a district heating scheme. So we have the local utility called Lansing Board of Water and Light. And I know we're recording this in February of 2026. So I know you've had some listening sessions, you're working with planning commissions and city council members. So a lot of this, cat is out of the hat. So, but talk a little bit about what you mean when you partner with Board of Water and Light and the closed loop system. Obviously, water needs to be initially put into the system, but then it just continues to circle through instead of coming in and going out.
Yeah. So the first point to that is every project that we do has what we call a heat off taker. So someone who needs the heat either for their business or for sort of residential heating or a district energy system like the Board of Water and Lights. So every Deep Green project has that heat off taker. For the Lansing one specifically, we partnered with BWL. They're supplying the power to the site, but also taking the heat from the site to use in their new hot water loop. So for us, that made Lansing a really great project. They were transforming the steam system into a hot water system. That makes it a lot more suitable for data center heat. And BWR have been great to work with. So we just thought this was a really good project. And we were able to, it was the Lansing district energy system is of a size that we were able to give a lot of heat to make a meaningful impact to the city's heating requirements. The closed loop system is kind of, you're right, you fill it up once. It's a sort of glycol water mix. I mean, glycol's very, very common. It's used in hospitals, ice cream trucks, all sorts. So you fill it up once. That's used to kind of circulate around the data center, take heat away from the servers. And it sort of lasts between 5 and 7 years, and then it's disposed of and refilled. So every drop of that liquid gets filled up, and it doesn't sort of leave that system until it's disposed of. And that's basically what our closed loop system is. Got
it. And I've seen renderings and I know where your building is proposed to go. You mentioned earlier that a lot of data centers out there that are being built are massive and that you're not as big. Can you give us kind of a scale as to what size your building is as opposed to the traditional data center?
Yeah, so I mean, traditional data centers are one thing. I mean, I think the new kind of hyperscale data centers that people are seeing in the news, could be sort of 500 plus acres. I mean, the size of sort of towns. We're talking about a kind of unused city parking lot. So a couple of acres downtown. It's a sort of pretty much unused parking lot. So it's kind of urban infill. We like to take land that's not being utilized fully, in this case a parking lot, and turn it into something that looks attractive but also has a kind of has a purpose behind it. So for this case it's sort of increasing the digital capability of Lansing in the local area, but also giving away that heat to the district energy system operating in Lansing.
That's great. And so before I dive into kind of where things stand today and where the future holds, I want to give a nod to my friends at Triterra. So Triterra is a leading environmental consulting firm headquartered in Lansing, Michigan, with staff around the state to serve your brownfield development, environmental consulting, and natural resource management needs. Since 2008, Triterra has been successfully advising a wide range of organizations to implement solutions to complex environmental challenges. If you are a business, a developer, a property owner, a lending institution, an attorney, or a governmental entity looking for a solution and you want prompt and timely service, don't hesitate to contact my friends at Triterra. Led by CEO and visionary Don McNabb, JP Buckingham, and Dave Van Haren, and supported by dozens of technical experts, you can't miss by calling Triterra at 517-702-0470 or visit them at triterra.us. So now I know you've been doing the right thing in having community listening sessions, nights, weekends, Zoom, live, all that stuff, not only educating city council and planning commission, but the citizens that have concerns. How do you feel that's gone? Do you feel like you've been able to deliver information that helps these folks feel more educated? And what are the hurdles that still need to be cleared?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. I think our intention with these events is to allow the Lansing community and the city council to make a decision based on the facts. We know there's a lot of stuff out there. We know there's a lot of anti-data center sort of sentiment, and we share a lot of those concerns with the industry. So we 100% understand where people are coming from. I think we just want to communicate the Deep Green story, how we're trying to do things differently, and allow them to make a choice whether they want that in Lansing. We believe it's a really valuable project for the city. It delivers loads of economic benefits, social benefits, and for us, we don't see any sort of negative environmental or negative impacts on the local community. So we think it's a really positive project. We're trying to communicate that to the locals. We've been really impressed. I think Lansing is a really engaged community. We've had loads of sort of positive feedback. We've had loads of feedback from people who might not support it, but it's always been done in a really constructive way. So we've really enjoyed those events. I think we've been successful in trying to communicate how we're doing things differently. We know there's some sort of skepticism out there, which we totally understand, but we'll continue to talk to people and try and get our message across.
Right. And I know there's a lot of language about whether it's state government or city government or local government that is trying to regulate data centers, like get ahead of it, create zoning protocols and best practices and demand certain things be done a certain way to kind of get ahead of it. But it seems like the things that they might incorporate are things that you're doing anyway. Maybe, capping the size of the structure, or, noise suppression systems, or the way your water and glycol, I guess, are being received and deployed, and mandatory partnerships with someone who's going to use this heat, whether it's a utility provider or other user. So it sounds like you're probably checking a lot of the boxes that people are concerned aren't being checked in other municipalities. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, by nature, where we come from, we're a European company. European regulations are a lot more stringent across planning and environment. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. And, there is regulation now in Germany that's mandating heat reuse for data centers of a certain size. So I think it's sort of in our DNA that those kind of regulations are just baked into all the designs that we do. We certainly think that they should be incorporated across the industry, but ultimately that's for the states to decide. What's best for them and what's best for their residents. But we just know that we have a sort of core principle of how we want to do things, and we really believe that provides a lot of value whilst causing no harm to the local community. So we think more people should be doing it.
Got it. Well, it's very early February of 26. What are you on certain agenda items, and when do you think approvals, if they come, will be allowed or will be approved? And then what does a construction cycle look like? When do you think this might be up and running if everything goes the way you hope?
So the rezoning vote is in February. So we hope that will be successful. And if that is successful, we believe it's probably 12 to 18 months to get the data center live.
Got it. Okay. Well, because there's a lot of information out there, a lot of keyboard warriors, is there a place that you might recommend people to go that gives them kind of an agnostic explanation of data centers and the differences between data centers? Like, is there a forum or just a platform that people could go to that aren't necessarily Deep Green, but just a trustworthy source?
I think really the sort of mainstream news sites. So anything in general for sort of fact-based reporting on data centers, whoever your sort of mainstream news site is, I would go there rather than social media or TikTok, Facebook. We'll probably avoid those for facts. But there's a lot of pretty balanced views out there, and there's a lot of quite data center critical stuff out there in the mainstream media that is based on facts. So would recommend that. I mean, in the UK, the BBC has done quite a bit on data centers, so that might be worth checking out. But I'm sure whoever it is will do the same stateside.
Right on. Okay. And how can people learn more about Deep Green specifically?
Yeah, so our website is deepgreen.energy. So we sort of host a few bits of content there, and you can learn about Deep Green. We're on LinkedIn. I think that's sort of might be where we share updates and news articles that we're in. We've recently been sort of in a Bloomberg article that we've shared on there that's worth reading, talking about the enormous wasted opportunity that data centers are not reusing their heat. So our CEO, Mark, was talking to Bloomberg earlier last week. Stuff like that's all posted to our LinkedIn. So I suggest checking that out.
Got it. Perfect. Well, that's really helpful. I got to tell you, selfishly, I wanted this topic on because I don't know much at data centers and I wanted to learn. And I figured this would be a great way for me to learn and share it with my listening audience. Obviously, we all want everything done the right way. And assuming you do things the right way, I wish you nothing but the best. I know in my research for the show, looking through your website, following you on LinkedIn, I've been impressed by the proactive approach and a lot of the words that are used that I've already read that quell my concerns. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I wish you well, and I hope you have smooth sailing and that the public takes it easy on you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Yep. We've been talking to the Vice President of Strategy and Operations for Deep Green, Mr. Luke Gavin. Thanks very much, and all the best to you. And I'd love to give a final shout out to all of our loyal sponsors: Wagoner Financial, Good Marketing, Triterra Environmental, Keller Williams Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, Kirk Byron State Farm, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All fantastic people that are worth the call. And if you found the show as a one-off, I want to remind you to follow and subscribe to Michigan Reimagined on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts. Chris Buck signing off for Michigan Reimagined, and thanks again for joining me today, Luke.
Thanks, Chris.